Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to ace algebra. In this webinar, we take a look at how, if you know just very simple concepts in algebra, you can solve the easiest to the most challenging questions in absolute value inequalities and both linear as well as quadratic inequalities. Um, this is a fairly application-focused webinar, and we do require that you have some background in inequalities and absolute value. And to make sure that you have the right material to learn those concepts, we did send these few video lessons your way. Uh, if you've not gone through these video lessons are part of your free trial. When you log into e-GMAT.com, you should be able to get to these video lessons. With that, let me introduce my team. My name is Rajat Sidana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your co-host today. Supporting me in this webinar is Ashutosh. Ashutosh is a GMAT quant expert, and he's going to be our co-host as well. Your main host today would be Payal Tandon, who's the other co-founder of e-GMAT, and she's also the author of e-GMAT's quant offering. This is a free webinar, and to make sure that we do justice to this group as a whole, we ask a couple of leading questions. One of them is, when do you plan to take the test? And the second one is, what's your target GMAT score? If you've not responded to either one of these questions, please do so. Okay, let's get some data. With regards to when do people plan to take the test, what I see over here is that we have three larger groups, those who have their test in 46 to 75 days, those who have more than 75 days before the GMAT, and those who have their test right away, which is in about 15 days. And then with regards to, excuse me, the target GMAT scores, what we really see is more than 50% if you're aiming for a score of 730 or higher. A fairly significant number of you are in that 710, 720 bracket. And we have about 23% of you who are in that bracket of 600 to 700. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. This information would definitely help Payal personalize this webinar to your needs. Now, we also have some upcoming free sessions. If you want to get to a score of 700 or higher, if you want to get to those 740s, 760s, you need to do three things well. You need to have a study plan that's personalized to your strengths and weaknesses. You need to learn the core skills that are required to hit those high percentiles. And you need to be able to track your improvement so that when you put in time, you can really see that you're actually improving on those core skills. The free GMAT strategy webinar discusses each one of these 3 points and helps you build a system that you can use. Then we have another webinar, which is next Sunday, a week from now, which talks about the opportunities that IESE Business School provides. IESE, in my opinion, is one of those hidden gems that a few people know about, but not a lot of people know completely about. How many of you over here are looking for a career transformation with regards to your MBA? And I define career transformation as looking to change either the industry that you work in or the function that you work in, or the country where you want to live your life. And about 80% of you. The IISc Business School accounts for one of the highest percentages of career transformation, and they call it triple career transformation, where people change their function, industry, as well as the location where they work. And that, I think, for me, is an incredible opportunity. Also, given the fact that where its location is in Southern Europe, and where its students work after graduation, it boasts an incredibly high salary. So again, it's one of those schools that you should have on your radar when you look at these metrics, and especially if you're interested in working internationally and if you're interested in career transformations. So definitely register for that one. Okay, with that, let's go right into the webinar pane. The screen either will have changed for you or will be in the process of changing for you. Once you see Algebra Quant Live sessions, that's when the system has stabilized for you. If you see Algebra Quant Live session, then please select yes. That way I know the screen has already changed for you guys. All right. Okay, there's essentially three parts of this webinar. In the first part, we're going to provide a brief introduction to e-GMAT. That's going to be about 12 minutes. In the second part, we're going to get into the core of this webinar, which is the live session. That's going to be when Pyle takes over. And in the third part, we'll have an open-ended Q&A, in which if you've any question that has not been answered so far, we'll answer that question. So with that, let's start with the first part of this webinar, which is an introduction to e-GMAT. So early on, I asked this question that, hey, what's your target GMAT score? And upwards of 50% of this group aims to get to a score of 730 or higher. While that is the case, only 6% of the students get to the score of 720 or higher. And this is despite the fact that median scores at top B schools continue to go up. For those of you who recently read the news, the median score at Tuck Business School reached a new high. It's a record high this year. So what is it that people who, a good number of people who actually get to those scores of 720 or higher do? A good number of them use e-GMAT. Why do I say that? If you look at the key metrics on top forums, whether it's a number of verified reviews or the number of success stories that have been posted over the last 12 months, but you're going to reach to a very similar conclusion. e-GMAT accounts for more verified reviews than do all the other major prep companies. And this is across the year. So since October of 2015, when GMAT Club started tracking what is called a verified review. And when you look at the last 12 months, most students mention e-GMAT as the prep company helping them to succeed, then do mention all of the other prep companies combined. So what makes our students more successful? I think if there's one thing that makes our students more successful, it is our approach to GMAT preparation. So or the architecture of the learning that we provide. So when you think about the various architectures of learning that exist today, you're going to find that there are two dominant architectures that exist today. One is the book-based architecture, and the second is a private tutoring-based architecture. And when you map most of the other courses out there by other companies, what you're going to find is that even though they provide audiovisual instruction, they provide quizzes, they provide mocks, their core learning architecture and feedback architecture is based around this book-based approach. When you look at e-GMAT and then you evaluate our learning and feedback architecture, you're going to find that it's modeled after the private tutoring-based approach. So let's see, why is it that one architecture is more effective than the other in helping you get to that high score of 720 or 740 or 760. So if you want to get to that score of 720 or higher, the first thing you need to do is you need to create a study plan that's personalized to your strengths and weaknesses. Then you need to learn all the concepts that you need to learn, concepts that you don't know about. Merely knowing the concepts isn't enough. You also need to know how to apply these concepts on easy, medium, and hard problems, kind of similar to what Pyle would do, just in the domain of inequalities and absolute value over here in this webinar. And you need to get so good at applying those concepts that you attain a level of mastery that puts you in that top 4, top 5, or top 1 percentile of students. Let's see how a book-based approach tackles that challenge. A book-based approach is all about uniformity in one way. So when you start studying using a book, you get two study plans, one verbal, one quant based, and you decide on which study plan to use, and you go on from there. Then you start learning concepts. Now, books are a great source of learning concepts. The only problem is they don't tell you how well you've learned. So when 1,000 people read a chapter in a book, they learn to 1,000 different degrees. Probably 30 to 40% of them learn enough to move on to that next chapter. The remaining don't. But books don't give you feedback as to which parts do you need to revise if you've not learned a concept well, and whether you've learned a concept well or not. So that burden of validation is completely on the student. One area where books don't do as great a job is teaching you how to apply those concepts, just because the static nature of the book is not very well suited to telling you what you need to do in step 1, step 2, and step 3 when solving a problem that tests a particular concept. And hence, people who study using books, they resort to solving hundreds and hundreds of questions in the hope of perfecting this application. And some people, the best and the brightest, are able to do that, but many struggle to perfect application despite knowing the concepts. And when it comes to evaluation of mastery, people who follow the book-based approach resort to taking tens of mock tests to ensure that they reach those scores. And even when they take a mock test, that onus of evaluation as to what your strengths and weaknesses are is completely on the student. A private tutoring based architecture works very differently. When you work with a good private tutor, the first thing that a private tutor does is to create your study plan, where he or she would personalize that study plan to your strengths and make sure that you spend enough time overcoming your weakness. Then a private tutor would start teaching you concepts, and as a tutor teaches you concepts, he'll give feedback on the areas that you still need to work on, because not everyone gets everything in the first go. There is reinforcement needed. Then, once you've learned a few concepts, a private tutor would teach you how to apply those concepts while solving questions. What do you need to do in step 1? What do you need to do in step 2 and step 3? And as you falter, which most of you would, a private tutor would give you feedback as to the step on which you're faltering, so that you can correct yourself and get better at applying those concepts. And when it comes to evaluation of mastery, as you solve more and more questions, a private tutor would tailor specific evaluations to ensure that you've mastered a particular area, such as number properties, word problems, inequalities, and so that you can then move on from one particular topic to the other. So even though you're learning the same content, even though you're learning for the same test, you can really see why a private tutor, the private tutor based approach is a lot more personalized, and why it would be a lot more successful in helping you ace the GMAT, because the GMAT is what I call as a zero-sum game, where if you get a certain score, someone else doesn't. Why? Because it's a score, it's a test of percentiles. So let's see, why do we really say that e-GMAT's built around this private tutoring based architecture, whereas most of these other courses are built around that book based architecture. So we're going to follow the same model. We're going to take an example of a student who wants to go from a score of 600 to 720. The first thing that you need to do in that journey is to create your personalized study plan. And to do that, what you need to do, what we've done is we've created this AI-driven tool called Gmat Planner that allows each and every one of you to build your personalized study plan. What this tool does is it takes into account your starting scores in quant and verbal, and then it gives you a recommendation as to, if you want to get to a certain score, what should be your target quant and your target verbal scores. It then looks at how can you get to your target quant and target verbal score. So it takes into account about 100 odd combinations to get to a Q50 and a V38, and recommends the most likely combination, the combination that you're most likely to be able to get to in the fastest amount of time. When that happens, your overall GMAT preparation is the journey of 5 different abilities, from the starting abilities on the left over here and to the ending abilities towards the right. So in arithmetic, for example, let me actually draw this. You're now looking to go from a 59th percentile in arithmetic to an 83rd percentile in arithmetic, or a 50th percentile in sentence correction, and forgive my bad handwriting, to an 89th percentile in sentence correction. Now, some of you may ask, hey, how do you figure out that you are at a 59th percentile in arithmetic or at a 50th percentile in sentence correction? Well, we have a mock test for that called a sigma x mock, which not only gives you this estimated starting score, it will also give you these starting percentiles. So it tells you where you are today, and using that data and using Gmat Planner, you can really create a plan to go from where you are to where you want to be. Next, the Gmat Planner tells you how much time do you need to improve in each subsection. So over here you can see your starting abilities, your target abilities, and how much time do you need to spend on every subsection. And this time over here that is recommended takes into account how many hours you can put in every day. And it then gives you a calendar view. You can really see the number of hours have been put in over here, more hours on the weekend, and fewer hours on the weekdays, because this is what you put in over here as inputs to the planner. It also tells you an estimated date when you can take the test. So why did we spend upwards of 1,000 hours building this utility? So that each one of you can create your personalized study plan in fewer than 7 minutes. So that was just about planning, and you can really see that um, that this plan is a lot more personalized. It has those milestones that can help you get there, and if you hit those milestones, there's no reason why you shouldn't hit that score of 720. And we've had upwards of 10,000 study plans that have been created using GMAT Planner. The next step is learning concepts. Okay, a good private tutor, remember, teaches you concepts and gives you feedback which is personalized to you. The e-GMAT learning architecture is designed just to do that. We have specific concepts. This is, for example, your divisibility and remainders module. You see your specific video lessons, and within the video lesson, which I'm going to show you a bit later on, you actually have specific feedback areas. Now compare this uh, to another popular course by Magoosh, and what you're going to find is that, hey, it's not as comprehensive. You just have 2 lessons on divisibility. There is no provision for feedback, and let's kind of look a bit more detail into it. So this is how the divisibility concept looks like from inside. What you see is this focus on learning the concepts, and then you have practice right then and there. So you learn the concept, you learn how to apply the concept in a very simple fashion right then and there. All of this information that you have, um, I'm sorry, all of this information that you see over here comes with animation. So we provide the right information to you at the right time. Okay, so you learn a concept, you're able to apply it right then and there, and you see right information at the right time. When you compare this to the Magoosh offering, what you're going to find is that this is very verbose. It's fairly passive, and there's no evaluation within the concept itself. The next thing is application of concepts. Okay, remember, a good private tutor tells you how to apply the concepts, teaching you what you need to do in step 1, step 2, and step 3. We do the same thing within our modules. We have this entity called an application file in which we teach you how to apply the concepts. We then have practice quizzes right after those. Let me just go there. So you see the application file over here. You see the practice quizzes, application file, and practice quizzes. And then we have a set of official questions on which you can apply your understanding. Again, the fundamental principle: learn the concept, learn the application, apply it right then and there to make sure that you can solve the easiest to the most challenging questions. That way, you know that in divisibility and remainders, you hit that 90th percentile. And when you do that in divisibility and remainders, and in even and odd, and primes, and an LCM GCD, you know that you're close to hitting that 90th percentile on number properties overall. And this is how every module in quanta verbal is architected. And again, when you compare this to the Magoosh offering, what you're going to find is that there is no application file. There's just one quiz with 5 questions. Again, you don't see the score. The goal over here is not to give you feedback, but just to give you practice. And this practice is common not just to divisibility and remainders, but also to primes, also to GCD and LCM, and testing cases. And why is this important? The reason why this is important is because your goal is not just to learn these concepts, but to hit that 83rd percentile, which is, by the way, a Q50. And so it's about perfection, and not so much about just knowing the concepts, because just knowing the concepts is not going to get you there. The next step is evaluation of mastery. You've been studying for number properties, or LCM, GCD, or divisibility for so long. You've got to figure out, or algebra, whether you've hit that 83rd percentile or not. And to do that, we have this concept called ability quizzes, where you can take an ability quiz and it can tell you what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and clearly, as you can see in this case, that the student needs to focus his energy on functions and inequalities. And by the way, this presentation is eating my eyes. So And because you have this focus, you can go back, revise these concepts, and come back, take another ability quiz, and track your improvement. So you can now see why do we say that most of the other courses out there are built around this book-based architecture, whereas e-GMAT is built around this private tutoring-based approach. Now, who's created some of this content? GMAT Club's top 5 rated instructors who are among those ranked 1 to 5 have created this content. Each one of these instructors is reviewed a lot more heavily on GMAT Club than instructors from other prep companies. So while only 6% of the people get to those 720 or higher scores, you can really see that why a good percentage of them use e-GMAT. With that, I've come to the end of my introduction. I'm now going to invite Payal to start the second part of this webinar. But before that, if you want to stay updated with all things e-GMAT, you're welcome to connect with me on my LinkedIn. I have upwards of 12,500 students connected with me on my LinkedIn, and we do post about 5 to 6 articles every week over there that talk about trends in the GMAT as well as MBA space. Okay, Shaista says, is there anything available for AWA as well? Shaista, great question. Frankly, when people go through our CR course, they don't see the need for an AWA. In fact, our students have written guides for AWA, but if you need help, we'd be happy to provide you with that. Okay, Payal.
Thank you, Rajat, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Algebra webinar. Let's just make sure that everyone can hear me loud and clear. Can you please press yes if you can hear me clearly? All right, sounds good. Okay, so before I go into outlining the purpose of this session, which a number of you already know, I'm going to ask you a question, and let me just get my polls set up here. Yes, here. Tell me how comfortable do you feel with algebra? What's the current problem? What's the problem that you face in algebra today? Or just give me your take on algebra right now. Okay, let's hear it from more people. Quite comfortable and slow. Okay. What else? I'm just starting with comfortable. Okay. Data sufficiency. All right. What else? Okay. Confusing on GMAT questions. Finding answers fast, data sufficiency. So it's primarily data sufficiency is what I can see here. And I do have some comments in the Q&A pod as well. Wanted to know different models. Okay. So one thing that I would say is that whatever questions I ask you, please put in the answers to those questions in the short answer poll here. The questions that you have from us, that is from me or from Ashutosh, put those in the Q&A pod so that Ashutosh can respond to those questions, or I can take up those questions if they are pertinent to the slide that we are talking about. Okay. All right. So let's see some more. Avoid to be trapped by tricky questions. All right. Sounds good. So it appears as if a number of you are comfortable with algebra as a topic, but you. Okay, let's just but you need help in just fine tuning your preparation, and you want to make sure that you can answer data sufficiency questions correctly. All right, let's just make sure that everyone can hear me clearly. Is my voice clear? Can you please tell me is the quality of the voice okay? Okay, just hold on for 1 second. All right, how about now? Is it better? Yeah, so just want to make sure that the quality of audio is absolutely fine and you're not having any problems hearing me or okay, perfect. That sounds good. Thank you very much. Apologize for that little bit of a segue. Okay, so what we're going to do in this session is I understand where you guys are at now in terms of what you feel your problems with algebra are. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about the basic concepts which are tested on the GMAT with regards to algebra. Now this session is not really, I'm not going to be teaching you those concepts, and again a number of you are very comfortable with algebra, and so keeping that in mind, I'm not going to be teaching you those concepts, but I'm going to be talking about how do you apply those concepts in the context of the GMAT. Okay, now I do hope that all of you have gone through the prerequisite material that was provided to you as a preparation for this session. Please press yes if you have gone through that prerequisite material, or no if you haven't. Okay, so quite a few of you have not gone through that material. Again, I hope that you can catch up, but again, given that you guys feel comfortable, I think that should not be a problem, but we'll see as to how that goes. So what we're going to really focus on is really what's the process that you should use in order to solve questions, and we are going to be talking about, so I would want you guys to make a note of any and all key takeaways that you experience, that you learn from this session. Okay, and again towards the end, as you're going through the session, what you will find is you'll get that feedback from me based on the performance of on questions that I give you, based on the questions that I ask you while discussing solutions. You are going to get feedback from me that will help you identify gaps in your preparation, and then after the session you will be able to go back and then fix those gaps. Okay, so with that, let's talk about how we are going to progress in this session. So the topics that we are talking about in this session are limited to linear inequalities, quadratic inequalities, absolute value equation, and absolute value inequalities. We do talk about quadratic equations as well, as you will see. And so we'll begin with a warm-up quiz. There's going to be 6 questions in that. Then we're going to be now the questions in warm-up quiz may not be exactly GMAT style questions, but after giving you feedback on your basic understanding of the different concepts that you are supposed to have, we'll start solving GMAT like questions. We're going to be solving 6 problem solving questions and 3 data sufficiency questions. Okay, and yeah, so let's get going with the warm-up section. These are again basic questions on the test, and the whole intent of this part is to give you feedback on your current conceptual knowledge. Okay, and I'm not going to be discussing solutions in detail for these questions, because again these are very basic questions. Okay, all right, so let's go through this. You're going to see 3 questions back to back here, and then after you solve those 3 questions, we will discuss the solutions we will discuss your performance on those 3 questions. All right, so everyone ready for this? Yes, good. All right, now one thing that I do want to tell you is that I ask a lot of questions in the session. So the more you participate in the session, the more enjoyable it is going to be. Okay, so yeah, so let's you have taken the time out, so let's just put in that effort and then be more vocal from your side. Okay, when I say vocal, I mean type in more in the question answer poll. All right, so let's get going here. Here's your first question, and I'm going to get the poll for you. Right? I'm going to move to the next question. Now, I forgot to tell you guys this. Let me open this poll here. Can you all please click on still solving? This is the poll for question number 2. Basically, when about 50% of you have selected the answer, I'm going to give you about 10-second warning so that you can put in your answers, and then we can move on to the next question. But the answer is not B here. This is still question number 2, so I just want you guys to click on still solving here. So if you can please change your vote from B to still solving, I would appreciate that. Okay, so let's go on to question number 2. Go ahead. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next question. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second, guys. My mouse is creating some issues at my end, so okay. Need to. Okay. Now this is not the question, so just give me 1 second here. Guys, just hold on for 1 second. Ashutosh, can you select the poll for question number 3 from your end while I fix my system here? For some reason, I'm not able to select it. Ashutosh, the poll for question number 3, warm-up question 3. Guys, just bear with us for a couple of seconds here. I may have to restart my system. Not sure. I understand that. I know that you guys can only see. I'm going to mute myself for just a couple of, for just a minute here while I fix the system here. Alright, sorry about that, guys. Think I fixed it here. Okay. Too many Bluetooth devices connected on my computer. Okay, so so can you all first please click on still solving? Let me clear the answers here. Okay, let's go to question number 3 now. Okay. All right, last 20 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay. So let's go back to question number 1. So almost everyone got this question correct. And this is obviously the first question in the session and the easiest question. So what is the range of values of y if 4y plus 10 is greater than minus y? So here all we have to do is solve this inequality. So we move the like terms on the same side, and then we simply process it further. We divide both sides of the inequality by 5, and we get y is greater than minus 2, and choice B is the correct answer. So there are no surprises here. Relatively straightforward. Let's now move on to question number 2. Okay. Now this is where things started to get interesting. The correct answer for question number 2 is choice B. So quite a few of you, 57% of the class, selected this correct choice. However, quite a few of you could not solve this question, could not select the choice within the time frame that I had given, and I had given you quite a bit of time. So even though I gave you a warning of 10 seconds, I actually did end the poll after about 30 seconds. So what this tells me is that people who were not able to select choice B or were not able to make any selection at all, you were stuck somewhere. Okay, so let's look at how to solve this. So again, now in this question, instead of a single inequality in a single variable, we have two inequalities in two variables. So what we have to do is we have to simply process them together. And so for that we need to multiply. We need to bring one inequality in a form such that we can cancel out one of the variables. So we do that, and what we get is y is greater than minus 2. Okay, so again, I'm not sure what was complicated with this question. So tell me, for those of you who did not select choice B, where did you get stuck? because that is the kind of feedback that you should get from this session. So that's the kind of introspection that you should do after reviewing the solution and comparing your approach with what I talk about, with what I present in terms of the solution. So tell me, why did you face problems with this question? Absolutely, we can. Can we add inequality? Absolutely. If you have the same sign of the inequality, then you can definitely add. Okay, and that's what we've made sure over here, that both the inequalities have greater than sign here. Okay, didn't think of multiplying by 2. Okay, so if you didn't think of multiplying by 2, then again, that is a simple thing that you do even with equations, even with linear equations. So again, if you couldn't multiply by 2, then again you have to go back to your skill set in solving equations. Okay, I made a mistake in the calculation. Okay, didn't think of I multiplied by 3. Well, you could have done that by multiplying by 3 as well. But yeah, so there's no problem with that, as long as you're getting to the right answer, as long as you're not making any mistakes. Okay, all right, so let's go forward now. Let's look at question number 3, where things got even more interesting. Share the poll for question 3. Now question 3, if you look at the answer choices here, you won't be able to tell what the correct answer is, given that there is no clear winner in terms of the responses that you guys gave me. So the correct answer here is choice C. Okay, so let's look at this question. Again, we are applying the same thing. Both the inequalities have the same sign. So we can add these inequalities, and what we get, we cancel out the n. So what we get is minus 4m is greater than minus 10. Now my question to you is, if minus 4m is greater than n is greater than minus 10m, then can I write it as shown over here, that 4m is greater than 10? Can I cancel out the negative sign from both the sides? No, absolutely not. I cannot do that. Why? Why can I not do that? Because I'm dealing with inequalities, which means I need to flip the sign, right? So I cannot do that. Essentially, whenever I multiply both sides of inequality by minus 1, I need to flip the sign of the inequality. So I'm multiplying both sides by minus 1. So I'm going to flip the sign, and it is going to be 4m is less than 10, which means m is less than 10 by 4. Okay. Now, if m is less than 10 by 4, then what are the possible values of m? So if m is less than 10 by 4, this means that m is less than 2.5. Okay, which means that because m is an integer, what has been given to me? What's given to me is that m is an integer. M is a non-negative integral values, which means that m is an integer first of all. Okay, and then I have to select non-negative values. Now, what are non-negative values? What are non-negative values? 0, 1, 2, yes. So you need to include 0 here. So for those of you who selected choice B, and let's take a look at the poll here. For those of you who selected choice C, if you got to choice C for the right reasons, then good. For those of you who selected choice B, where you faltered was you did not consider 0 as a non-negative integer. Okay, 0 is not a positive integer, but 0 is a non-negative integer. Okay, so I want you guys to make a note of that point in your notes. Okay, so that you don't make this mistake. Okay, all right. So now tell me, for those of you who could not solve this question, where did you get stuck? Because the accuracy for this question is really low. Will we cover how to deal with flipping the signs today? That is where That is where I went wrong in the last step. Okay, well, that's all there is to know. We are going to be testing it again and again. Basically, whenever you're multiplying both sides of the inequality by a negative number, you have to flip the sign. So that should be your biggest learning from the previous question and from this question. Okay. The other learning from this question is that 0 is a non-negative integer. 0 is an integer first of all, and then it is a non-negative integer. Okay. So make a note of both of those things, because especially the flipping of the sign upon multiplying the inequality by a negative number, that is something which we will be talking about time and again in this session, definitely. So I have another comment here. So basically solve inequalities as normal equations. Just remember to change the sign. Absolutely, but there is one more thing. You always have to make sure when you're considering them as a normal equation, the sign of the inequality needs to be the same for both, and that's what we call as bring the inequality in a standard form. Okay, so again, as long as both you cannot add this inequality with this inequality if, let's say, one of them had a, if let's say you had a less than sign over here, you'll have to flip the signs. Okay, all right, so we are good so far. Now we are going to move on to the next set of two warm-up questions. Again, we'll solve two questions side by side. Okay, all right, so you guys are learning something here. We've solved three questions so far, easy questions, but I hope that you guys are learning something over here which you can take away from the session and make sure that you don't make those mistakes when you're practicing quant on your own. Okay, sounds good. Now, one more thing is that when I ask you questions in the short answer poll, I address some of your comments, but I may not be able to address all of your comments. So please feel free to paste those comments in the Q&A pod so that Ashutosh can respond to those. Okay? All right. Okay, so let's come back to our question solving mode. And here it goes. Click on still solving, please. There you go. All right. Last 10 seconds. I'm going to end the poll now. Let's go on to question number 5. Yeah, please click on still solving. All right, here's question number 5. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so how were these two questions? Question number 4 and 5. Dealing with quadratic inequalities now. Okay, so let's look at question number 4. Choice C is the correct answer, and only about 59% of the class got the question correct. Quite a few of you could not attempt the question, and then some of you answered the question incorrectly. So how do you approach such a question? What is the range of x for the inequality x minus 2 times x minus 3 is greater than 0? What is the base, for those of you who selected choice C, what is the basic principle behind such questions? Absolutely. So what you are saying is, okay, so let's both positive, both 0. I used elimination method instead of solving, tried each option. Okay, so the right method here is that you consider, you figure out that, okay, what is given to you? Just understand, forget about x and forget about the variable here. Just see that what does x minus 2 result in? It's a number here. What is x minus 3? It's another number. So when two numbers are multiplied, the answer is greater than 0, which means that when is the product of two numbers greater than 0? When both the numbers are greater than 0, or when both the numbers are less than 0. That is when both the numbers are positive or when both the numbers are negative. So you are considering, you're starting off with those two cases here. Essentially, you're considering these two as two numbers, and you're thinking, okay, when is the product of two numbers greater than 0? Okay, now you carry forward with figuring out if x minus 2 is to be positive, this means that x minus 2 is greater than 0. If x minus 3 is to be positive, this means x minus 3 is greater than 0. What does that mean? That means that x is greater than 2 and x is greater than 3. Now, if x has to be greater than 3, so basically then you see if x is greater than 2, then so if x is greater than 3, in that condition x will also be greater than 2. So basically by combining these two inequalities, what you're getting is x is greater than 3. Is this point clear to everyone? How we got to x is greater than 3 from this working out? Okay, good. Now we'll do the same thing over here. X minus 2 is less than 0, x minus 3 is less than 0. You basically then get x is less than 2, and then you get x is less than 3, right? Now, how is it that for each number, so again, you need to now combine these two inequalities, right? So for as long as x is less than 2, x is also going to be less than 3, right? Which means that the common thing between these two conditions is that x is less than 2. So now your correct answer is choice number C over here, choice C, because when you're saying minus infinity to 2, what this means is that x is less than 2. X is f, so if you draw a number line over here, this is 0 over here, so and this is 2, this is minus 2 over here, right? So all these numbers are expressed by the range minus infinity to, oh, sorry, I have, it has to be here, not here. Sorry about that. Yeah, all these numbers represent minus infinity to 2. Okay, and then and then you have 3 over here. Sorry about that. And then you have 3 over here, and then all these numbers represent 3 to plus infinity. Okay, so that's how you solve such questions. Okay, all right. So now let's take a look at the next question. What is the range of x for the inequal? Okay, okay. Now what we are doing over here is we are applying this is the same question, question number 4, and we are applying the Wavy line method. How many of you are familiar with the Wavy line method? Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with the wavy line method, I am going to be sharing an article with you in this session, and I want you to go through that article. Again, it's an application of what I explained to you in the previous slide, but if you learn the wavy line method, it's going to be a lot more. It's just a faster way of solving such questions. Okay, but the basic principle behind the wavy line method is exactly the same. So you derive. You arrive at the wavy line method, or you derive this conclusion over here, which is the wavy line method conclusion, from the basic principle that we discussed in the previous slide. Okay, so after the session, I would want you to go through the article, which I will share with you after we discuss the warm-up questions. Okay, so now let's come to question number 5 here. Question number 5 is rather interesting question. So the accuracy for this question is similar to the accuracy of the previous question. About 50% of the class got this question correct. Okay, but let me ask you one question here. Will I solve this question? Will it be right approach if I solve this question as I multiply x plus 4 on both the sides, and x plus 4 gets, so what I end up getting is x minus 3 is less than 0. Will that be correct? Why would that not be correct? Tell me, why would that not be correct? Okay, yes, because we don't know if x plus 4 is positive or negative. Okay, basically, for those of you who could not understand my question, all I'm saying is that because x minus 3 plus divided by x plus 4 is less than 0, can I not just multiply x plus 4 on both the sides of the inequality and end up getting x minus 3 is less than 0? The answer is no, I cannot do that. Why? Because I don't know whether x plus 4 is positive or negative. Okay, now why do I care about that? Because if you remember, in inequalities we have to be very careful when we multiply both sides by a negative number. Okay, so we need to flip the sign of the inequality, right? So in this case, we don't know if x plus 4 is greater than 0 or if x plus 4 is less than 0. Okay, so I cannot simply multiply both sides by x plus 4. Okay, now what if, but still I do need to solve this inequality. Now what if I multiply both sides by x plus 4 whole squared? How about that? Can I do that? I can absolutely do that. Why? Because x plus 4 whole square is always a positive number. Okay, and if I multiply both sides by a positive number, the sign of the inequality does not change. So that's essentially what I'm doing here. I'm multiplying both sides by x plus 4 whole square, and what I end up getting is x plus 4 into x minus 3 is less than 0. And now I apply my method to solve this quadratic inequality, and what I end up getting is, again, here I'm showing the method of wavy line method, but you can use the basic principles over here. What you end up getting is choice C as the correct answer. Okay, so what was the learning from this question? Question number 5. What did you learn from this question? Guys, what did you learn from using square of functions? Yes. So basically what you understand here is, in this question we are applying the fundamental principle behind inequalities with regards to flipping of the sign when you multiply both sides by a negative number. You are applying that over here. Okay, you are saying that, okay, yes, you cannot multiply both sides by x plus 4, but you can definitely multiply both sides by x plus 4 squared. So this is a way to simplify the given inequality. And this thing is applicable, you can apply, and this is something which, this is a skill that you need to have. Okay, all right, so Now we are down to question number 6. Let's solve this question. And then we will be done with the warm-up section. Can you please click on still solving? Okay, go ahead. All right, last few seconds here. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so you guys did decently well in this. This is an absolute value inequality, a relatively straightforward question. So I'm substituting x plus 3 as z just so I can visualize it properly on the number line. So what I get is mod of z is less than or equal to 5. So if I convert that into an inequality, what I'm going to get is that minus 5 is less than or equal to z is less than or equal to 5. Okay, essentially all this is saying is that the distance of z from 0 is less than or equal to 5 on both the sides. Then I replace z by x plus 3, and what I end up getting is minus 8 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 2. Okay, so relatively straightforward question. Okay, so good. And again, over here it's just another representation of the absolute value. So basically what we have learned is, again, and this is something very important to understand. A number of you said that you're very comfortable with algebra, okay, and that is actually very good. But what I feel is, given your performance, and again, I'm talking about class, the entire class in general. In fact, let me ask you this question. Let's figure out how many questions did you get correct. Select the number of questions that you got correct. So for those of you who got all the 6 questions correct, you guys have very, very solid conceptual understanding. Okay, granted, you got the questions correct, not by fluke, but by applying the right principles, right? But for those of you who got fewer than 6 questions correct, there is some conceptual gap that you have. It may be as small as you didn't consider 0 to be the non-negative integer, or it may be as big as you don't understand how to solve inequalities, especially when you multiply both sides by a negative number, the inequality sign flips. Now, why does that happen? You don't understand that. First of all, you don't understand that that happens, and then why does that happen? You don't understand that, right? So which means that you don't have that 200% clarity in your conceptual knowledge. Okay, and I don't just stop at 100% clarity. I want you, each one of you, to have that 200% clarity. Why? Because if you don't understand the basic concepts, and if you're not comfortable to that degree while solving basic questions, when you see questions in which a higher order application is required, you will definitely falter. Okay, so I want all of you to take that feedback, that just don't disregard these questions as, oh, that's an easy question, oh, I just made a silly mistake, oh, this is a small thing. Now you need to have an absolutely clear idea as to why you made a mistake and what is it that you need to learn. Okay. Any comments on your learnings from warm-up section before we move to the next section of GMAT style questions? What is this Wavy method? I will just share that with you. But tell me about what is it that you've learned so far. I knew I'm unsure of flipping science rules. Got that cleared. Absolutely, that's very nice. How to solve absolute inequalities? Need to review the concept. Why does sign flip? Okay. But if you're asking why does sign flip, again, I'm not going to be explaining that concept, but in our inequalities concept file, this aspect has been explained in detail. So after the session, please go through that concept file. Okay. Okay. Okay, so there is a long question with regards to question number 5. Please put that question in the Q&A pod so that Ashutosh can answer. Okay. I know you're considering only x to be less than 4, but then x can be less than minus 4 as well, such that it doesn't result in a 0 denominator. Okay, so again, but put that question in the Q&A pod so that Ashutosh can respond in detail. All right then, so let's move on to our next section. And by the way, this is the wavy line method. So this is an article that we've posted on GMAT Club. So please go through this method. Again, it's based on the basic principle that I explained to you while solving question number 4. All right. Okay, so now we are on to our GMAT style questions. Let's get going with it. We'll follow the same process that we used while solving these questions, while solving the warm-up questions. Let me just get the poll here, the right poll. Okay, can you all please click on still solving? Go ahead. Here's the question. Last 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So about 70% of the class got this question correct. But I could see that some of you took quite long to solve this question. So let's just go through the solution here. So it's a relatively straightforward question. What you have is an inequality in a single variable. So you bring the like terms on the same side. So what you get, and we need to find out the range of x. Okay, now One thing to notice is that there is no constraint that has been put in on the value of x. Okay, so let's carry forward. We rearrange the terms and we get minus 32x is greater than 64. Now this is where the flipping sign comes into picture, because if you multiply both sides by minus 1, you need to flip the sign. So what you get is x is less than minus 2. So for those of you who selected choice B, you made a mistake because you didn't flip the sign. Okay, so that's a feedback for you. So that there are 3 of you who selected choice B. All right, so straightforward question here. Now let's move on. So for those of you who selected choice D, probably it was a silly mistake on your side wherein you missed out on the minus sign over here. Not sure as to why that would happen, but probably that's what went on. Okay, so all right. So now let's go on to our next question. Now next question, I'm just giving you a hint. This is the same inequality as the inequality in the previous question, so you can use x is less than minus 2 as the solution to that, right? So just letting you know. So what this is saying is, what is the minimum value of x if these two inequalities hold true? So let me remove the answers here, and can you all please click on still solving? Okay, let's go ahead. Can you hear me now? Okay, all right, sounds good. Not sure what happened there. Okay, so what I was telling you is that given the choice A and B are the most popular choices, and my statement to you is that given that these are the two choices that you guys have selected, um, you do understand how to solve inequalities, okay, especially in the single variable. Now, where do you think you made a mistake? Tell me. Where do you think you've made a mistake? Absolutely. X has to be an integer. So for all those who selected choice A as the correct answer, you did not see what the question is. The question is saying minimum value of the integer x. 5.5 cannot be an integer. So that's the mistake that you made. Now, how many of you will classify this mistake as a silly mistake? If let's say you face same problem, you experience the same thing while solving questions on your own, how many of you will write this mistake down as a silly mistake? Okay, that needs to change from going forward now. This is not a silly mistake. This is a mistake that you have done because you have not identified the constraints that are given to you. The constraint that's given to you is x is an integer, and you did not focus on this constraint. And this is a very, very important process skill. Identifying constraints is a very, very important process skill. So I want you guys to make a note of that and make sure that every time you read a quant question, you make a note of the constraints that are given to you in the question. Okay, if you remember for the previous question, I explicitly said no constraint on the value of x. Okay, you have to consciously make that observation, and for you to make that observation consciously every time you read a question, you have to make that as a you have to make a conscious effort of that. Okay, until the time you don't identify exactly why you made such a mistake, till the time you continue saying that this was a silly mistake, you will not be able to make that as a process, as a habit. Is this point clear, guys? Okay, good. So again, another learning here, process skill, applying constraints, identifying and applying constraints, very, very, very important process skill. And this skill is applicable across the board, not just in algebra, it's applicable very much in number properties, very much in geometry, every single section in quant, this process skill is applicable. Okay, all right, so now let's move on to our next question, and I will bring back the poll here. Let's click on still solving, please. Okay, go ahead, solve the question. Last 30 seconds. All right. So I'm going to end the poll now. And okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you another question here. It's pretty similar to this question, but I want you to take a note. Can you please click on have not solved yet, please? Okay, so now here comes your next question, question number 4. This is question number 4 here. Okay, go ahead, solve this. All right then, last 10 seconds. I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, let's look at your responses. Let's solve the previous question, question number 3, and let me bring back your responses here. So again, similar issue that I saw for the previous question. You've selected choice A and D, which tells me that you know how to solve quadratic inequality, but you've made the mistake again in terms of figuring out the constraint. And I'll tell you what do I mean by that when I go through the solution of this question. So basically what you have is z square plus 4 and you have z square minus 2, right? So here what I'll do is, in order to simplify this question, I will simply so what I do is I observe these two things here, these two numbers that the product of which is less than 0. Okay, now what I need to find out is the range of z square. So that's the first thing that I have to keep in mind, that it's z square that I need to find the range for. Okay, now this is the inequality that I need to solve. Now for the product of these two numbers to be less than 0, what is the condition? The condition is that one of the numbers has to be less than 0, right? One of the numbers has to be less than 0. Now tell me, can z square plus 4 ever be less than 0? Can z square plus 4 ever be less than 0? No. Right? So what number can be less than 0 then? The only number that can be less than 0 in these two, between these two numbers, is z square minus 2. Okay, which means that the condition that I have, so basically how am I saying that z square plus 4 can never be less than 0? Because z square is always a non-negative number. It's a square of a number, right? Which means that the only number that can be less than 0 is z square minus 2, which means z square is less than 2, which means this is the range for z square. So the correct answer choice is choice D, which about 42% of the class selected. The other major group was choice A. So this group, people who selected choice A, made the mistake of not keeping in mind this conceptual constraint. Okay, so here's what I want you to understand. In the previous question, in question number 2, what was the constraint that we had? We had the constraint that was given in the question. In this question, what is the constraint that we have? In this question, the constraint is a conceptual constraint. Okay, I want you to keep this in mind. Very, very important. This is the second type of constraint that you have to always be cognizant of. Okay, let's say, and again, this thing is applicable across the board. Let's say you had a question with regards to number properties, and there it said, it's the only even prime number. That's a constraint that has been given to you from the question itself, right? So that's a condition. Okay, so again, this applying constraints process skill is applicable across the board. You have to be very, very attentive when you are solving questions, because you have to keep constraints not only that are given to you in the question statement in mind, but also that are conceptual. Okay, GMAT does not consider irrational numbers. Yes, so I have a question in the Q&A board. Yeah, GMAT doesn't consider imaginary numbers. Okay, all right, so any comments here? For those of you who selected choice A, do you guys understand where you faltered? Okay, so I have this question. Z square is greater than minus 4. Why is that not a valid constraint? Again, that's Z square plus 4 is always a positive number. So there is no constraint, there is no limit over here that you are implementing for this entire inequality to hold true. You have to find the range of values of Z square for this, so that this inequality holds true. For that, you have to figure out, okay, both these numbers, one of the numbers has to be less than 0, right? And that's how you're getting at the answer here. Okay. All right. So let's now move on to our next. So this is how I did the wavy line method. So again, if I substitute x z square with x as z square, then I can simply apply the wavy line method. And again, I'm doing the same thing over here. I'm essentially doing exactly the same thing, but in a little bit different manner. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to our, this was question number 4. Yes, sorry. Let me bring back the poll for question number 4. Question number 4, let's broadcast the result. The correct answer is choice C, which about less than half of the class selected. So what we need to figure out is, in this question, how many values of z square satisfy this inequality, and what's given to us is that z is an integer. Okay, so again, what we have is, the final thing that we got was 0 is less than z square is less than equal to z square is less than 2, right? So z is an integer. I have to find out the values of z square that satisfy this inequality. So the only two possible values over here are 0 and 1, which means that the correct answer is choice C. Okay. Now, where did you guys falter here? Where did you guys falter here? Less than half of the class got this question correct. Because you got the last question wrong, yes. Okay, considered 0 as non, okay. See, z is an integer. So 0 can very well be a value because 0 is an integer. Okay. I thought they asked the value for, okay, let me broadcast. I thought they asked the values for z. Yes, so that's another thing. What are they asking the value for? That's very important. Okay. All right then, so let's do an overview of 4 questions that we've solved. Basically what we've done is we've solved questions related to change of sign. We also saw perfect square is always non-negative, greater than or equal to 0. Somebody asked me, why do you have greater than or equal to sign? Because we are talking about z square. So greater than or so z, so it has to, so you need to include the greater than or equal to sign there. Then wavy line method, we applied that. Then we got the equation to bring in the same form. Then we focused on the constraints on the variables. That is a very, very important process skill. Okay, and then lastly, for those of you who read z square instead of z square, you read it as z. That's, again, read the question statement properly. Now, with all of this already done, let's now move on to solving 700 level questions correctly. Okay, so again, we are going to be applying the same concepts but on a little bit more difficult questions. Okay, let's click on still solving, please. Again, for those of you who still have questions with regards to questions 3 and 4, please put them in the Q&A pod so that Ashutosh can respond to those. All right, here's question number 5 here. All right, last 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So I know that quite a few of you were not able to solve this question. What was so tricky about this question? And you guys took quite a lot of time. No, I think upwards of 4 minutes. What's so tricky about this question? A lot of steps, approach, flipping signs, and that got totally confused. Okay, so let's go through the solution here. Being organized, absolutely. That is what is required here. Okay, so let's look at the solution here. So basically what you have is x and y are positive integers, okay, such that these are the two inequalities given to us. Okay, now we have to find the positive difference between minimum value of x and minimum value of y. Okay, so let's carry forward here. Constraint x and y are positive integers. Now we basically solve the inequalities. Okay, so what you have is you're bringing this in standard form. Essentially, you're bringing all the terms on one side and you have greater than 0 sign here. Then you basically do the same thing for the second inequality as well. Remember when I said that if you have to add two inequalities, you have to make sure that they have the same sign. And this is what we mean over here by same sign. Okay. All right. So then let's go forward. Now you have x plus 2y minus 20 here. Here you have minus 3x. So you multiply this inequality by 3 and what you get is 3x plus 6y minus 60. Now can you guys hear me clearly? Just wanted to make sure that my voice is clear. Yes? Okay. Perfect. Okay. Why are some of you saying no? Can you please press yes if you can hear me clearly? Okay. That is so weird. Quite a few of you cannot hear me clearly. What's wrong? You cannot hear me, or is the voice not clear? What's happening? You cannot hear me clearly at all, or is the voice not clear? Cracking a lot. That is so weird. This has never happened. Okay. Okay, how about now? I apologize, guys. This doesn't happen usually. How about now? Is it okay now? It's the same. Oh, goodness. Okay. Okay. The network is absolutely fine at my end. Let's just... Okay. How about now? Is it okay now? I don't know. Okay, how about now? Is it okay now? Very clear. Okay. Guys, I'm not sure. For some of you, it's okay. For some of you, it's not okay. Usually, it's just a couple of people for whom the voice is not okay. Is the voice okay now? No. Okay. Guys, let me log back in. Okay. Okay. Let me just log back in into the application. Okay. All right, so let's continue with this. I hope that the voice will stay okay. All right. So basically, what we do is we multiply. So we are solving question. We are solving for y over here, and what we get is y is greater than 6. Okay, and then we basically do further processing, and we get x is less than 8. Now, if these are the two values that you're getting, if you're getting y is greater than 6, then what is the minimum value of y? If y is greater than 6, what is the minimum value of y? Absolutely. Minimum value of y will be 7. And if x is less than 8, then what is the minimum value of, what is the minimum possible value of x? If x is less than 8, then what is the minimum possible value of x? Absolutely, 1. X is equal to 1. So these are the two values that you get. When you take the difference of the two, what you get is 6 as the answer. Okay, so again, you have to get the positive difference. That's why minus 6 could not have been the answer. Now, for those of you who selected choice B as the correct answer, you took maximum value of x as the constraint. Okay, so tell me, where did you falter here? Now that you have the solution right in front of you, I won't even say that there are a number of steps here, because over here what you see, they're just two inequalities. You have to solve them twice so that you get the value, first the value of x and then the value of y. Beyond that, you simply have to implement the constraints that have been given to you. Okay, now sign flips, if that's where you faltered, then again, you can see how that small concept can cost you so many questions. Okay, took the longest time to realize x is positive, contrasting 1, okay, equal to 1, okay. All right, so good. I'm glad that you are able to figure out why you are faltering. And that's a very, very important skill. When you are reviewing the solution of the questions, you should be able to do that kind of strategic review of the questions so that you identify why exactly did you make a mistake in this question. Okay, so you need to be sharp enough to understand, to look at the solution and then compare that to the approach that you had and figure out why is it that you couldn't do what the solution asked you to do. And that's the power of reviewing the solutions or preparing from the content which is created or based on the very logics that are tested, based on the basic concepts that are tested on the test. Okay? All right. Now this question that you see on the screen is going to take you easily 5 minutes to solve. Now I do want you to go through this question because a lot of skills that you have learned so far you will be able to apply on this question. Okay. Now will you get such a question in the test? Probably a simplified version of this question, but again, nothing in this question is such that you are not able, that you're not equipped to handle. So take a deep breath, look at the question. There's a lot of different things that you have to do in it, a lot of logical things that you have to do in it. Okay, and try to be organized. Don't just rush through this question. Okay, so can you all please click on still solving? Think about this question to be the culmination of of all that you've read so far. All right, go ahead and solve this question. How many of you need more time to solve this question? Okay, all right, so I'll let you work on it. All right, so I am going to end the poll now. All right, so how was this question? I'm stuck. Okay. The correct answer is choice A. Okay. Challenging but solvable. Okay. So let's go through this, and I'm going to go through this slowly so that you can figure out where you faltered or what part did you not do correctly. Okay. So the first thing over here that I do is, and let me ask you, this is, what kind of inequality are these? What kind of inequalities are these? Are these quadratic inequalities? You can get them to be quadratic inequalities, but first you have to see, okay, how is it that you should be simplifying? Okay, so 1 by r square minus 1 by s square is greater than minus 9, and then you can have a similar inequality in 1 by r square and 1 by s square. So the first thing that I will do is I will substitute 1 by r square as x. Okay, absolutely need to convert it into linear inequality. Okay, so 1 by r square is x and 1 by s square as y, so that I get something which is more familiar to me, something that I'm more comfortable with, my linear inequalities. How many of you did that? How many of you converted the given thing, given inequality, into a linear inequality? Okay, so about less than half of the class did that. Okay, that is step number one that you should have done. And this process skill is called as simplification. You take a complicated looking expression or equation or inequality, and you see how can you maneuver it, or how can you work with it so that you simplify it. Okay, and that is a very, very important skill, because it breaks down a very complicated question into very simple question, complicated question into multiple simple easy steps. That's what we are doing over here. Okay, so please make that learning, please document that learning. Okay, all right, so we do this, and then we basically solve this inequality, and what we get is x is less than 16 and y is less than 25, which means that what we are really doing is 1 by r square is less than 16 and 1 by s square is less than 25. That's what we are doing. So essentially, if you think about it, all we did was we replaced the appropriate variables, okay, and then we solved the inequality. We got the values, okay, and solving these two inequalities is not really that complicated. It's a system of linear inequalities, right? And we got the values of as x is less than 16 and y is less than 25. Now we have this as the inequality here, 1 by r square is less than 16. Now I can actually convert that into my simple quadratic inequality here. Okay, and this is again your a square minus b square is equal to a minus b into a plus b formula that you're applying here. Okay, and you do the same thing for 1 by s square is less than 25 as well. Now all you have to do is plot it on your number line so that you get the overlap zone, and what you'll notice is that the overlap zone between s and r is nothing but the zone for r, and that's what your answer is, choice A. So tell me, given the solution, do you still think that the problem is complicated? Given the solution, is there anything that is there in this solution that you haven't solved in the entire session today? Tell me, is there any new concept in this question that you have not seen in the questions till now in this session? Arrived at our RNS but stuck at finding the overlap. Overlap, okay. Overlap, again, you have to understand what overlap is. Okay, overlap is, if you think about it, when we solve those questions in which we said x minus 3 into x minus 2 is less than, is greater than 0, in that we are actually doing overlap, right? So that's the same thing that you're applying over here. Okay, so once again, questions can be made difficult using your very, very basic concepts. And this question is an example of that. Okay, and that's the reason having the 200% clarity on the simple concepts is so very critical. That's the reason why focusing on the process skills of applying constraints of simplification is so very critical. That is why being organized while you're solving questions is so very critical. Okay? Overlap implies intersection. Okay? All right. Let's move on to our next set of questions now. So now we are going to go into, I believe, data sufficiency questions. Yes. So something that all of you have been waiting for, the data sufficiency questions. Let's get going with those. Let's click on still solving, please. Okay, here you go. All right, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so let's solve this question here. What is it asking us? It's telling us that it is simply asking, is z positive? Okay. Now, what has been given to us? What's given to us is a z is an integer, and we also know that mod of z is less than 6, which means, what does that mean in terms of what are the possible values of z? If mod of z is less than 6, and if z is an integer, then what all values are possible for z? It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus, it can also be minus 5, minus 4, minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, and 0. You cannot forget 0. Okay? Okay? So there are a total of 11 possible values of z, ranging all the way from minus 5 to all the way to 5. Okay? Alright, so good. Now, let's look at statement 1. So we need to find out if z is positive. Now, what's the first statement telling me? Mod of z minus 2 is greater than 3. Okay. Now, if I say that mod of z minus 2 is greater than 3, then really, okay, mod of z minus 2 is greater than 3, I can either say that, okay, z minus 2 is greater than 3, or I can say that z minus 2 is less than 3, right? Now z minus 2, because again this is mod of a number is greater than 3, so that can be split into these two different cases, right? Now in the case that z minus 2 is greater than 3, I'll get z is greater than 5. If z minus 2 is less than minus 3, I'm going to get z is less than minus 1. Okay, so really speaking, over here what I'm getting is that either z is greater than 5 or z is less than 1, which means, but what I already know is from my question statement that that z cannot be greater than 5, right? So this case is not applicable at all because of the information that's given to me in the question statement, which means that the only case in which z minus 2, mod of z minus 2 is greater than 3, that is z is less than minus 1, this is the only case that is possible, which means that z is indeed negative, which means that statement 1 is sufficient. Okay? Now, we move on to statement number 2. Statement number 2 says mod of z is equal to 2, which means that z can take two values, either plus 2 or minus 2. Statement 2 is not sufficient. That's why the correct answer is choice A. Now tell me, only 15 of you selected choice A as the correct answer. So tell me, where did you falter? First of all, let's do the easy part. People who selected choice B, how did you select choice B as the correct answer? For that matter, people who selected choice B and choice D, how could you select B and D as the correct answer when all the statement tells you is that mod of z is equal to 2? In that case, z can be either plus 2 or minus 2. So those two were not, those two choices cannot be correct. Now tell me, why did you reject, for those of you who selected choices C and E, why did you reject statement 1? Why did you think that statement 1 is not sufficient? Didn't consider the constraint. Okay. So you didn't consider the information that was given to you in the question statement. Okay. But is there anything in this question, now that you've gone through the solution, is there anything in this question that was overly complicated? It's all basic stuff that you've learned. right? So again, as long as you keep the basic stuff in mind and you solve the question using a step-by-step process, you will not falter. But the minute you don't keep those things in mind, the minute you don't write down things properly, you are going to falter. Why did I say that z minus 2 is greater is z minus 2 is less than minus 3? I didn't say z minus 2 is equal to minus 3. So again, that's the condition that you get from opening up this absolute value inequality. Okay. All right. Let's move on to question number 8. Can you click on still solving, please? All right. Go ahead. Start solving the question. All right. Last 10 seconds. All right. I'm going to end the poll now. Okay. So let's go through this question now. What we have to find out is A less than B? And what's given to us is, let's take a look at statement 1. Mod of A minus B is equal to B minus A. Now, what can you tell about how will you solve this equation? The way to do that is to consider this number over here on the left hand side of the equation as a modulus of a number. Now, what do you know about the modulus of a number? What do you know about property of modulus of a number? It's always non-negative, not just positive, non-negative, and that's a very, very important thing. If y is equal to mod of x, then that means y is a non-negative number. Okay, so that means y is greater than or equal to 0. You have to consider the equal to sign here. Okay, so what do you get then? Which means that if b minus a is nothing but modulus of a number, in this case the number is a minus b, so what you're going to say is that this number b minus a is always greater than or equal to 0. Okay, which means that b is greater than or equal to a, which means that either a is equal to b or a is less than b, which means that statement 1 is not sufficient. So for those of you who selected choices A and choice D, you made the mistake of not considering the equal to 0 sign. Okay, so again, where you faltered was that you didn't consider that y is a non-negative number. You considered it just to be positive. And that's what costed you this question. All right, now let's take a look at statement B. What statement B is saying is a by b is less than 1. Now, can I say in this statement, because a by b is less than 1, can I simply say that a is less than b? Okay, no, I cannot say that a is less than b. Why is that? Why can I not say that a is less than b? Tell me. Don't know the sign of b. Absolutely, because I don't know the sign of b. Now, in one case, b is greater than 0. In the other case, b is less than 0. If b is greater than 0, then a is less than b. If b is less than 0, then if I take b, if I multiply minus b on minus 1 on both the sides, then a will be greater than b. Okay, so again I have two cases here, which means statement 2 is also not sufficient, right? So for those of you who selected choices B and D, you could have, if you selected choice B, then you made this mistake of not considering the sign flip when you multiply both sides by a negative number. Now when I combine both the statements, because both these statements are true, what I get is that I take the intersection here, and the intersection is that A is indeed less than B. Okay, and both the conditions together are sufficient. Okay, so the correct answer is choice C. Okay, all right then. What have you learned so far in these data sufficiency questions? Because in the next question, which is the last question of the session, I would want you guys to apply these learnings, because that question is very much similar to these two questions. Always pay attention to constraints. What else? Beware of 0. Yes, absolutely. You're not clear how we combine. Now, when you essentially what you by combining, what you're saying is that if both these statements are true, then what needs to be true for both these statements to be true? That's what you're doing. Now, if both these statements are true, then obviously all of these conditions cannot be true, right? So if both of these statements are true, then you have to have only a certain set of conditions that will be true. Essentially, you're finding the intersection, and that's what you're doing over here. Okay, all right, so now let's move on to the last question. And again, as I said, similar stuff. Make sure that you apply those learnings here. Can you please click on still solving? Go ahead. All right, last few seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Wow, it's a pretty regular shape here. Okay, so let's look at the solution. I'm not going to tell you the answer just yet. So what we have to find out is z greater than 2. Okay, there's no constraint given to us, nothing else. Let's take a look at statement number 1. Statement 1 tells us that mod of z minus 2 whole square is greater than 4. Now tell me, mod of z minus 2 whole square is greater than 4. What comes out of that? Essentially, this 2 is over here square, so apologize for the little bit font mess up here. Square of any number is always non-negative, right? So regardless of modulus doesn't have any impact on this inequality, right? Do you all agree with that? Yes, mod of this number is not required at all, right? So essentially all this is saying is mod of a positive number is greater than 4, and we know that mod of a positive number is always positive, right? So what you can actually say is, all this is saying is z minus 2 whole square is greater than 2 square. Okay, again these are all squares here, okay, which means that z minus 2 square minus 2 square is greater than 0. So all I'm doing is I'm simplifying this quadratic inequality so that so that I can solve it. Okay, so then I have z minus 2, so z minus 2 whole square minus 2 square is greater than 0. I'm applying the a minus a square minus b square is equal to a minus b and a plus b formula here, and what I end up getting is z minus 4 into z is greater than 0. Okay, which means that if I plot it on the number line, I can, this is what I get, z is less than 0. Okay, so again, I'm basically applying the wavy line method over here, or you can apply the other basic method which we talked about, and what I get is that z is less than 0 or z is greater than 4. For those of you who can't come to this solution directly, it's okay. Go back and then apply that same process which we applied up front when we solved the quadratic inequality, or learn the wavy line method to arrive at this. Okay, so these are the two ranges that we get, and because z can be either less than 0 or z can be greater than 4, I don't know for sure whether z is indeed greater than 2 or not. I don't know. This part I'm not sure. Okay, so that's why statement 1 is not sufficient. Okay, now let's take a look at statement 2. All statement 2 is saying is mod of z is greater than or equal to 0. That's all statement 2 is saying, right? Because mod of z is equal to mod of a number. Now it's greater than or equal to 0, which means that z can be greater than 0 or z can be equal to 0. Again, statement 2 is not sufficient to tell me whether z is indeed greater than 2. Now I combine the two equations. What do I get? When I combine the two equations, what I get over here is that z for both of these equations, for both of these conditions to be true, statements to be true, z indeed has to be greater than 4. So I'm finding the overlap, so I'm finding the intersection here. Okay, for what value of z will all these conditions, will both these statements be true, and that is z is greater than 4. So which tells me that z is indeed greater than 2, and hence the correct answer is choice C. So tell me now, what was there in this question that you were not prepared to handle, that we got such a low accuracy here? Statement 1, should it not be? No, it should not be z greater than 0 and z greater than 4. Again, you have to do the processing as we did in the quadratic inequalities question that we solved in the basic questions. Okay, so if you're asking that question, then there is some conceptual gap there, so you need to work on that. Okay. If z minus 2 square is greater than 2 square, can we not make an inference and z minus 2 is greater than 2? No, we cannot. Again, you have to process it further. That's not, you cannot make that inference. You cannot simply remove the square from both the sides. Now, can you explain a second statement? Second statement is very similar to the previous, to the second statement of to question number 8. All we are saying is z is equal to mod of a number, and if z is equal to mod of a number, that means z is a non-negative number. So what you get is z is greater than 0 or z is equal to 2. Now I don't know whether z for sure is greater than 2 or not, so I cannot answer the question based on this statement. But guys, tell me, is there anything in this question that you are not equipped to handle? It's all about the basic concepts. It's all about those process skills that we've been talking about. Right? Now I'm going to ask you this question. Up in the beginning of the session, when I asked you how comfortable you are in algebra, what is the problem that you face? Now tell me, after this session, what do you think about your skill level in algebra? That's my first question to you. It's improved, okay. Need to focus on certain concepts. Quite clear about the approach from now on. Good, good. Need to rework. I'm forgetting a few things I knew earlier. Okay. All right. So what I am going to suggest to all of you is, all the e-GMAT students, please go through the questions in the course in the right manner. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, when you're reviewing an application file, look at the solution in detail, because those solutions are based on the basic concepts, and they're based on the process that you need to be using in order to solve those questions. Okay, you need to learn these process skills, and those solutions clarify those process skills. Okay, so definitely please go through those in excruciating detail. Okay, so frankly, GMAT quant can be very easily mastered. You can improve from a low GMAT score if you focus on learning the right stuff. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to be sharing some success stories with you right now, so that you can see how students have indeed benefited from the e-GMAT course, and they have improved their quant scores. This first success story is for people who think they are good in GMAT quant, and you should read the student's verified review on GMAT Club. Now, Krish had always done well in quant, but he was stumped by the GMAT. He constantly faltered while answering GMAT questions, falling in familiar traps. Frustrated with the lack of progress, he decided to change his approach, and he started following a very methodical approach, even changing his approach to data sufficiency significantly. After making these changes, he was able to improve his quant score to Q51, the highest possible, and he ended up getting a 740. Now, the second story is of Leonardo, someone who has not been excellent with GMAT quant and was stuck at Q45 despite trying really hard. He needed a high quant score because he wanted to apply to finance-based schools such as NYU, Wharton, as well as schools such as Tepper. To improve beyond Q45, Leo adopted a methodical approach. He started consciously focusing on constraint, showing his work on paper. Okay, so he was very organized. Once he had the approach right, he made extensive use of analytics that Quant Scholarium provides to isolate the areas that he needed to improve upon. Then he used custom quizzing feature to ensure that he had indeed improved. And because of his good quant score and excellent verbal score, he was admitted to Wharton, Stern, and Tepper, and he's studying at Wharton right now. The third success story over here is of an individual who was extremely weak in quant. His starting score was Q30, a mere 20 percentile. Mazabar, that's his BTG forum name, spent a ton of time reading quant books but was not able to improve. He benefited from the progressive learning architecture at e-GMAT, in which he was able to first cement his basics before taking on difficult questions. And in case his basics were not strong enough, he was given appropriate feedback. Mazabar was able to improve to Q45, and that's 59 percentile in quant, and this was a huge improvement over his starting score. Now, Guillermo's story is again an amazing story of an individual who had an extremely strong determination to study at top B schools. He started at a Q38, which coincidentally is 38 percentile on GMAT quant. He realized that he needed a stellar quant score to get an admit from Wharton and GSB Chicago. And the only way to improve from such a low score was to truly focus on learning, which he did using the video lessons. Now, because he was short on time, he used analytics in Quant Scholaranium to isolate the areas where he needed most help. Like Leonardo, he used the custom quiz feature to ensure that he did indeed improve on these topics. So again, long story short, you can improve in quant, but for that you need to focus on learning and learning the right way and adopting those good habits. In the end, what I'd like to say is that make sure that when you're going through the concepts that you have that 200% clarity in the concepts. Okay, don't resort to shortcuts, don't resort to just tricks. Adopt that step-by-step process to solve questions. Okay, as soon as you have that solidified step-by-step approach, you will see that the kind of clarity you have in your mind when you're solving questions is going to increase tremendously, because you're not unnecessarily wasting your time trying to find tricks or trying to find different shortcuts to solve questions. You are completely focused on how to solve questions in a methodical manner. Read the question statement very intently. Okay, make sure that you notice all the constraints that are provided there. Again, that's a part of your process skill building. Then, this is an interesting point which I make sure the students understand. Trust the test maker. The test maker is not out there to trick you. Yes, the test maker is going to put those trick answer choices because he knows that, and those are trick answer choices only for those who follow those shortcuts. Okay, if you are following a methodical method, if you have that 200% level clarity in the concepts, then there is no reason why any of the choices will be trick choices. Okay, and frankly, really trust the test maker. He's not going to throw anything at you that's out of syllabus, that's out of context of what GMAT Quant is all about. And believe in your skills. You have everything with you in your arsenal to solve any of the problems that are posted on the GMAT. Okay, so again, believe in your skills. All right, so as next steps, what I would say is that for those of you who are e-GMAT students, please follow the course, work very, very intently, and do the course in the right manner. Okay, for those of you who are not as yet e-GMAT students, there are these concepts that are available in free trial for you. And these are the concepts that we looked at in today's session. So definitely go through those concepts in detail so that you understand those, and then solve the 2 practice questions that I will share with you in this PDF. Okay? All right then. So let me now share. As I share the PDF, I would want to get your feedback on the session, what you liked, what you learned, anything that you liked, anything that you didn't like, because the stuff that you liked, we'll make sure that we do them again and again. For stuff that you didn't like, we'll make sure that we implement corrective actions in our system. So, and I would also want you to rate this session so that I understand how well I did in the session, frankly. And here is the PDF for the session. And if you have any questions with regards to just your general preparation, you can post them in the Q&A pod, and I'll be more than happy to respond to those questions. And some qualitative feedback would be appreciated. I just have a single thank you. So for those of you who are giving me good ratings, so please, or who are not giving me good rating, please put your response over here so that I understand. I can gather more from it. All right, I don't see any questions in the Q&A pod. I guess it's been a long session for you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, just make sure that you handle quant in a very logical manner. Okay. All right, good luck then, and feel free to write to me at payal@e-gmat.com if you have any questions with regards to how do you prepare for quant, how do you prepare for verbal, what is it that you need to focus on, or any other questions. Again, feel free to email me. Okay. Yes, so the recording of this video of this session is going to be sent to you in another couple of hours. All right. Thank you all very much, and good luck for your preparation. Looking forward to seeing you on e-GMAT platform.